What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and the draft is finally wrapped up. And I'm going to let you know what I think of every team's draft class, and I'm going to put them in a little bit of a tier rank for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so coming in with our first team, we got the Arizona Cardinals. Now, we are going to be going in alphabetical order, so we are starting with the Cardinals, and we'll end with the Commanders. So, in the first round, they had two picks. They took Marvin Harrison Jr. and Darius Robinson. Starting there, Marvin Harrison Jr., an A-plus pick. I think he's the best receiver we've seen in quite some time. I think he was the most talented player in the class. Darius Robinson, not the biggest fan of. I think that was a little bit of a reach. But I get it that you want to, build that defensive line. There's not much there. You got B.J. Ojulari, who you got last year, who I was a really big fan of. But besides that, nothing really stands out on that defensive line. So I understand the pick, just not the biggest Darius Robinson fan. I think you could have got a guy like Marshawn Nealon, who was, a little bit similar to Darius Robinson, but you could have got him in the second round. And then in the second round, you got Max Melton. A lot of people are really high on him. I'm not the highest guy in the world on Max Melton. I know people like the Goat House is was vying for him to go in the first round. I'm not that big of a fan of him. Trey Benson, I think, was a very, very, very good pick. The Panthers went ahead and took Jonathan Brooks early-ish in the second round, and then the next running back didn't go off the board until here with the second pick of the third round. So I think this was really good value. Trey Benson was my running back one. I think he's, big, strong, fast, physical. He's got all the traits you want to see. So that was an A-plus pick in my opinion. Isaiah Adams, Tip Ryman, Elijah Jones, really good depth pieces. I don't think it was the greatest value on the board for either three of those guys. Adrian Taylor Demerson, I was a big fan of. And in the fourth round, I like the value there. Xavier Thomas, you take a shot on. I believe he was like the, third or fourth ranked prospect in the 2018 class. So, take the shot in the fifth round. He struggled with injuries a lot his college career, but the talent's there, the upside's there. So why not take a shot on him in the fifth round? I like that pick. And then Christian Jones and Tejon Palmer and Jaden Davis, solid depth pieces. Once you get into the fifth, sixth, and seventh round, it's a lot of depth. It's a lot of swing and misses. So, nothing too special in these later rounds, but I'm a big fan of the value they got in Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously. Trey Benson was very good value. Darius Robinson was meh, and then Max Melton was, solid value. So with all things considered, I'm going to put them in the B tier, just kind of a middle-of-the-pack draft, and with all those draft picks, I think you could have done a little bit better. Moving on to the Falcons. Falcons fans, get ready to be mad. Come at me in the comments. I'm not afraid of you. So Michael Penix with the 8th overall pick. If you look at my, my grades for every first round pick, Michael Penix Jr. was the only F grade. And it's not because of Michael Penix. I think Michael Penix is a really good quarterback, but the Falcons, I understand what they were trying to do with, trying to emulate the Green Bay Packers and, drafting a quarterback in the first round, letting him sit for 3-4 years, and then hopefully he'll take over and be just as good as Jordan Love is. The only problem I really have with that is, one, you just signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal, so you're not getting out of that for at least 2 or 3 years. Michael Penix Jr. is a, play now quarterback. He's probably the most, pro-ready quarterback in this class. So, I feel bad for Michael Penix because I feel like he, should be starting for a team in, next year or the year after that. And that's not going to happen with the Falcons. If the Falcons were going to do this, get the younger, higher upside quarterback in a J.J. McCarthy, because Michael Penix, if this plan, actually succeeds, he's not going to be taking over a quarterback until he's like 27. And plus, with Michael Penix, you can't ignore the injury history. 2 ACL injuries, 2 shoulder injuries. So, I don't know. If you were going to do this, I wish they would have got J.J. McCarthy instead. And then with Rook Aurora Rojo, trading up into the second round, jumping the Commanders, and taking Rook over Jerzon Newton, not a big fan of that. Again, I like Rook Aurora Rojo, but, if you were in position to take Jerzon Newton, you should have done that instead. Braylon Trace, I'm a big fan of him. I'm a bit higher on Braylon Trace than the consensus, so that's a good pick in my opinion. Same with Brandon Dorless. Not sure how he fell to the 4th round. Good pick there. And then the rest of these guys, J.D. Bertrand, Jace McClellan, Zion Logue, all these guys, solid depth pieces, but nothing to write home about necessarily. So a lot of reaches in the, higher end of the rounds. Braylon Trice, Brandon Dorless, really good value in the middle of the rounds. And then, fifth through sixth round picks, solid depth, nothing, eye popping. So I hate to do it to you Falcons fans, but with that Michael Penix pick, I'm sorry, it's an F. Come at me in the comments. You can try to change my mind. I would appreciate it if you do it in a respectful way, but if not, it's fine. You can try to change my mind, but for now, it's an F. Moving on, we got the Baltimore Ravens, and they ended up taking Nate Wiggins with their first round pick, a really good value in my opinion. Roger Rosengarten, same thing, very good value. Adisa Isaac, very good value. Devontae Walker, very good value. TJ Tampa, very good value. Rasheen Ali, someone I'm really, really high on. Devin Leary, solid backup quarterback pick. And then these last two guys, I'm not even familiar with, so I'm not really going to speak on them. So the story with the Ravens draft class is just very good value up and down the board. Nate Wiggins, I know he's a little bit smaller, not great in run defense, but he's got potential to be a shutdown cornerback, and if he's your cornerback too, that's really, really good. Roger Rosengarten, the Ravens need tackle help. Roger Rosengarten's, might not start right away, but he's got, really good swing tackle flexibility. Adisa Isaac, really good rotational pass rusher, really good first step, athletic monster. Devontae Walker, didn't have the best draft process, dropped a few balls at the Senior Bowl, but if you just look at the tape back at UNC and at Kent State, really good player, really good tape, fast, can beat press coverage. I like Devontae Walker a lot. The drop issues are a little bit overblown at this point, but it is something you got to look out for. TJ Tampa, fourth round, amazing value. Just really, really good value there for TJ Tampa. I thought he would go in the second round. Getting him at the end of the fourth round is incredible value. Rasheen Ali, I was a big fan of him during the summer. Kind of fell down my rankings. Wasn't a top 10 running back for me, but I still think he's a good player and he could contribute to a running back by committee, maybe getting a few touches here and there. Devin Leary, really good quarterback, probably be a very good backup for Lamar Jackson. And then, like I said, these last two guys, not too familiar with. But overall, the Ravens do it every year. Just a really good draft class by a really good team, so it's going to go in an A tier today. Not quite an S tier like some draft classes they've had before this one, but, like I said, great value up and down the board. Moving on, we got the Buffalo Bills, and they had a bit of a confusing day one of the draft. They traded back twice with, first of all, with the Kansas City Chiefs, their rival, and they traded back with them so they could get a receiver, which, doesn't make much sense to me. Why help your rival team? And then they traded again to the Panthers, and the Panthers drafted a wide receiver. And then they ended up getting Keon Coleman in the first pick of day two. I like Keon Coleman a lot, but, trading down that much, I don't know. I mean, you got solid value down the board. You got draft capital, but Keon Coleman, I like him, I think, a little bit more than consensus. You got concerns on if he's able to separate at the next level, but, really good contested catch guy. I like the pick. Cole Bishop at the end of the second round, a really good safety from Utah, nothing special. I think he could be a solid piece, especially since you lost both your safeties in Hyde and Poyer. Dwayne Carter with the third round pick. I really like Dwayne Carter. I think he's a very powerful defensive tackle. Didn't have the best 2023 compared to his 2022, but that's because I think he was the center of attention with, Duke. That's not necessarily going to be the case once he gets to the NFL, so he's not going to be seeing as much attention in the NFL, so I think he could thrive a little bit better in the NFL. Ray Davis, big Ray Davis guy here. If you don't know about Ray Davis' story, I would look that up. It's a really good story. The Kentucky running back, I love that pick a lot. Cedric Van Pran, really good center in the fifth round, good depth for you. And then some of these other guys like Olufashio, the linebacker out of Washington, Javon Solomon, really good depth, and these other guys. Not the most familiar with, so I'm not going to speak on too much. Overall, a solid draft class, nothing special. Definitely nothing special. I think it's more of just a middle of the pack draft class. We're going to go C tier for them. Moving on, we got the Carolina Panthers, and when you look at the names here, you like the draft class, but you got to take into account where they took these people. Xavier Legette, I'm fine with that pick. Some people might think it's a reach, but I'm a big fan of Xavier Legette. He's just a big, strong, physical guy. And you got separators already on the team, and Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen. So you need that big, just deep threat guy, and that's Xavier Legette. So I like that pick a lot. They took Jonathan Brooks pretty early in the second round. And the thing with Jonathan Brooks, I think he's a really talented running back, but he's coming off an ACL injury. And we've seen with running backs especially, it might take them a year or so to, really get back to form. You see with Saquon Barkley, when he tore his ACL, he was not the same running back for a full year after he recovered from it. So you got to be a little bit scared with that with Jonathan Brooks, but the talent's really good with him. Trevin Wallace, I think that was a bit of a reach in my opinion, but he could be a good linebacker for you. You lost out on Frankie Louvu, so you got to replace him somehow. JT Sanders, I think that's a really good value pick in the fourth round. I mean, he was a lot of people's tight end 2 for majority of the draft process. Kind of fell down people's boards just because he didn't test very well athletically, but he's a really good tight end nonetheless. Shaw Smith Wade, really good cornerback out of Washington State. Jaden Crumedy, same thing. Michael Barrett, linebacker. Really good names up and down the board, but maybe not the best value. So I'm going to end up going with B tier for them. Probably the back end of B tier, though, if I'm being honest. Moving on, we got the Chicago Bears, and, not many picks here, but they got really good players. Caleb Williams with the first overall pick, A+. Rome Odunze fell to them with their second first-round pick, A+ pick. And in the third round, they got Kieran Abagaji, a really good developmental tackle, who they can, hopefully develop, and in the next few years he can take over for, I guess, Braxton Jones, or, kick one of these guys into guard. Either way, I really like the value there. Torrey Taylor, I haven't watched tape on Torrey Taylor. He's a punter, but I heard he's a really good punter, so I'm not going to knock it too much. And then Austin Booker in the fifth round, really good value. A really raw edge rusher, but could end up being really, really good for the Bears. So I have no complaints with the Bears draft class. I'm going to go S tier just because of the top-end talent they were able to get in Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. Up next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. They ended up getting Amarius Mims, a really good developmental tackle with the 18th overall pick. And I like this a lot because he's able to learn behind Trent Brown and Orlando Brown Jr. Two really big tackles similar to Amarius Mims, so he gets to learn behind two guys similar to his size. And then he could hopefully take over for Trent Brown or Orlando Brown Jr., whichever one, after year one. And he's a really good backup piece in case one of those guys goes down with injury. In the second round, Chris Jenkins, really good value. Maybe not the most developed pass rusher, but he's really good at run defense, and he's an athletic freak. Jermaine Burton has second round talent, ended up falling to the third round due to character concerns. But if you really just look at the tape and look at his talent alone, really good player, could be a steal. McKinley Jackson, a really powerful defensive tackle. I like the value there. Eric All, same thing. Josh Noon, really good value. Tanner McLaughlin, good value, athletic tight end out of Arizona. And then Cedric Johnson, Dejon Anthony, and Matt Lee, solid value down the board as well. Overall, I really like this draft class. I think this sets the Bengals up really good in the future with guys like Jermaine Burton, Chris Jenkins, and Amarius Mims. Really high upside guys there. So we're going to end up going A tier. I'm not necessarily, ordering them like the Bengals might have a better draft class than the Ravens or so on. It's more just tier ranking, so don't take too much into account like, oh, why are the Bengals behind the Ravens? No, they're all A tier. I'm not necessarily ranking them, team by team. It's just the tiers. I want to make that known so no one in the comments comes at me for it. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns, they didn't have a first round pick, so their first pick came in the second round at the pick 22, and they took Mike Hall Jr., a really good penetrating 3-tech. I was really high on Michael Hall. I think he could be a really good pass rusher. So I like that pick a lot. Zach Zenter, same thing. Really good value, guard out of Michigan. Any pick on the offensive line, I'm really not going to knock for a team. I really like building the trenches, so I like that pick a lot. Jamari Thrash in the fifth round, really good value. The kind of small, speedster, athletic change of direction guy out of Louisville. Nathaniel Watson, linebacker out of Mississippi State. Miles Harden and Jawan Briggs. Solid value down the board. Nothing too special there. Overall, just, they didn't have very many high-end picks, so, they kind of made it work with what they had. I really like their first two picks of Mike Hall Jr. and Zach Zenter and Jamari Thrash in the fifth round, but I don't know. That draft class isn't going to wow you necessarily, and it's not really their fault because they didn't have a first-round pick, but I'm going to go C tier for them. Nothing too special. Moving on, we got the Dallas Cowboys, and they ended up trading back in the first round and still being able to get Tyler Guyton, a more developmental guy, out of Oklahoma. Not the biggest fan of this. I'm pretty sure they could have got Graham Barton, more of an interior guy, but they lost out on Tyler Biotish. They could kick Tyler Smith out to, tackle and then have Graham Barton play on the guard, but I don't know. I was never the biggest fan of Tyler Guyton. A little bit of a reach, in my opinion. I understand what they're doing. They're trying to get the Tyron Smith replacement. Marshawn Nealon, the edge rusher out of Western Michigan. A really powerful guy who's also still athletic for his size. Cooper Beebe, same thing, really good value. Not sure how he fell that far. And then they got Leafu, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. Kalen Carson, I like the value there. Ryan Flournoy, solid pick there. Nathan Thomas and Justin Rogers, not the most familiar with them too, so I'm not going to speak on them. So Cooper Beebe, I really like the value there. He can probably slide into one of those guard spots, or maybe you can try to play him at center, see if he can snap the ball, because they still need a center, the Cowboys do. Marshawn Nealon, a really good rotational guy. Maybe your DeMarcus Lawrence replacement down the road, and then Tyler Guyton hopefully can develop into your next Tyron Smith. So it's a lot of questions for this draft class, but I do think it's a solid one overall. I'm gonna go B tier, just a solid draft class, nothing too crazy. Moving on, we got the Denver Broncos. They ended up taking Bo Nix in the first round. And I'm not the biggest Bo Nix guy. Don't necessarily think, it was, the most bang for your buck here at pick 12. But I do think he'll fit in with the Sean Payton offense there in Denver. But taking QB6 at pick 12 just doesn't sit right with me. So that's a little bit of a knock I have for the pick. Jonah Ellis, the edge rusher out of Utah in the third round. Really good value. I'm a big fan of Jonah Ellis. I think he could end up being hear me out, a TJ Watt-esque player. Not saying he's ever going to be on the same level as TJ Watt, but he reminds me stylistically of TJ Watt. Troy Franklin in the fourth round, A-plus pick in my opinion. Don't know how he fell that far. I wouldn't have been mad at him going late, first round. Like if the Panthers selected him with the last pick in the first round, I wouldn't have been mad at it. So getting him all the way down in day 3, great pick. Chris Abrams-Strain could be a really good slot for you. Not the biggest guy in the world, but it could fit in the slot. Aldrick Estime, really good pickup here. A big bruising type of running back. And then the other 2 picks, not too familiar with. Overall, really good value up and down the board, except for the Bo Nix pick. But I understand you got to get your quarterback. You have no one on that roster that can play quarterback for you next season. So I can understand the quote-unquote reach here at pick 12. But overall, I'm not going to say it's a top-tier draft class, but, really good value up and down the board. We're going to go A tier for the Broncos. Moving on, we got the Detroit Lions, and they ended up taking Terrion Arnold in the first round. Maybe one of the steals of the draft, in my opinion. I don't know how he fell to 24. Really good pickup there. And then they, re-upped in that secondary, which I think is a good idea, getting Ennis Rakestraw Jr. in the second round. Just 2 really good cornerbacks, and they need secondary help, so I understand that a lot. Giovanni Manu, wasn't the most familiar with him, but, from the way they were talking about him, he's a big bruising type of offensive tackle who's just, loves to hit people. So, didn't watch tape on him, but from the highlights they showed during the draft, kind of became a fan of him. But I'm not going to speak too much on him because I don't know much about him. Sion Vaki, the running back out of Utah, safety too. Solid pickup there. Versatile, can play offense and defense. Mekhi Wingo, the defensive tackle out of LSU, good value there in the 6th round. And then Christian Mahogany, also really good value in the 6th round. I don't know how Christian Mahogany fell that far. Maybe injury history and stuff like that, but overall, really good draft class up and down the board. We're going to go A tier for them. Next up, we got the Green Bay Packers, and I think they did reach a little bit with this Jordan Morgan pick. I think Jordan Morgan was like 36 on my big board, so not the biggest reach, but it just didn't sit right with me when I heard Jordan Morgan's name get called. I don't know. Not the biggest fan of that one. Edgerrin Cooper, though, really athletic linebacker. Long guy, really good upside. I like that pick a lot. Javon Bullard, safety/slot cornerback. I like that pick a lot as well. Marshawn Lloyd, a lot of people were high on. I'm not the biggest Marshawn Lloyd guy, but, Delaware guy, so you got to represent Delaware. I like that. Tyron Hopper, the linebacker out of Missouri. Solid pick up there. And then just a lot of, solid picks. Kalen King down here at, 255 overall. Man, the fall from grace from that guy. First round talent during the summer scouting phase, and then just fell off a cliff. Hopefully he can turn it around. But overall, a solid draft class. Do I go B tier or C tier? We're going to go C tier, but I don't know. I could be convinced of B tier for that one. Just the Jordan Morgan pick didn't sit right with me. Moving on, we got the Houston Texans, who also did not have a first round pick, but I still think they had a really good draft class. Kamari Lassiter, big fan of Kamari Lassiter. I think he's Just a technically sound cornerback who's always in that, hit by hit with the receiver. Doesn't, is just a super sticky guy in coverage. Maybe not the most athletic guy in the world, but, you love everything else about the guy. Blake Fisher, really good offensive tackle. Probably be a swing tackle for him, but a really good one at that. Kalen Bullock, the really rangy speed safety. Don't ask him to tackle, which, I mean, is kind of a safety's job, but, not the best tackler. It's a lot of due to a size, but, he's got really good range for that free safety position. Cade Stover, just a really solid tight end. Just your prototypical number 2 tight end on a team. Just really good at blocking, can get you a first down in like 3rd and 2. I like to pick there. Sketch also announced that pick, which was really cool. Jamal Hill, the linebacker out of Oregon. Jawar Jordan, the running back out of Louisville. I guess good value there. And the same with all these later seventh round picks. Could be good depth, maybe special teams, but nothing crazy. I like their value from, the round 4 and up. Cade Stover, really good value. Kalen Bullock, solid value. Blake Fisher, really good value. And then Kamari Lasser, I think, is really good value as well. So I think they did pretty good with the picks that they had, but nothing to blow you away, so I am going to go B tier. Moving on, we got the Indianapolis Colts, and they took Leatu Latu. They had their pick of the first defensive player off the board at pick 15, which is wild. They ended up going Leatu Latu. I would have rather have seen them go maybe a Quinion Mitchell here, but I'm not mad at the Latu pick. I like Latu a lot. I think he's the most technically refined edge rusher in the class. Maybe not the highest upside, and you got to worry about his injury concerns. But I like him a lot. A.D. Mitchell, maybe the best value pick of the entire draft. Don't know how he fell to the 2nd round. Guys like Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, those guys should not have went ahead of A.D. Mitchell. I understand that he's diabetic and maybe has character concerns when he's, in the morning time when his blood sugar is, all wacky. I don't care about that. He's a great player on the field, and that's all I care about. Matt Goncalves, the offensive tackle / maybe guard in the NFL out of Pittsburgh. I like that pick a lot. Tanner Bortolini, the Wisconsin center. Anthony Gould, the Oregon State wide receiver. I like him a lot. He's not going to be nothing crazy in the league, but a really good 4th receiver on the team, I think. Jalen Simpson, the safety out of Auburn. I like him a lot, just not the biggest guy in the world. I believe he's like 180 pounds, which isn't really going to cut it at safety in the NFL. And then these other guys, not too familiar with. So overall, really good value with these first 3 picks. Solid value down the board with Anthony Gould and Jalen Simpson. So overall, just a really solid draft class. I'm going to go A. I like the draft class a lot just because of that A.D. Mitchell pick. Moving on to the Jaguars, they ended up trading back and still getting their guy, Brian Thomas Jr. I like that pick a lot. Mason Smith, maybe a little bit of a reach there. Coming off the ACL injury in 2023, didn't really have the greatest season, but he's got really good upside as long as he can, put it all together. He's an athletic freak. Jarian Jones, the cornerback out of Florida State, solid player. Javon Foster, could be a good swing tackle. Jordan Jefferson, DeAndre Prince, Kellen Robinson, Cam Little, and Miles Cole. They're just meh picks. I don't know. I like their 1st round pick. Jarian Jones is a solid pick. Mason Smith was a bit of a reach for me. I'm going to end up putting them C tier. Just nothing really wowed me, and there was a lot of just meh picks in the later rounds. Up next, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, and they ended up trading up with the Buffalo Bills, which, blows my mind. And they ended up taking Xavier Worthy, the speedster out of Texas. That's an A-plus pick just because it's the Chiefs, and they got Patrick Mahomes who could just launch the ball 70 yards down the field. If any other team took Xavier Worthy at 28, I might be saying it's a reach. But since it was the Chiefs, I like the pick a lot. Him and Hollywood Brown are going to, just light up defenses. Kingsley Suamatea, really good value at the back end of the 2nd round. A good developmental tackle out of BYU. Jared Wiley, the tight end out of TCU, solid. And then Jaden Hicks in the 4th round, the safety out of Washington State. I think that's a really good value. I think he could start a safety for him. And then Hunter Norzad, the lineman out of Penn State. Kamal Haddon, the Tennessee defensive back. Solid value down the board. And then, a really, really fun pick in the 1st round. And then great value with Jaden Hicks in the 4th. The rich keep getting richer. I'm going to end up going A tier just because I like the value. Next up, we got the Raiders. And they ended up surprising a lot of people taking Brock Bowers in the 1st round. And it was a little bit confusing for me. They drafted Michael Mayer last year in the 2nd round. I think Brock Bowers is more of a luxury pick, and I don't think the Raiders are in position to take luxury picks here. I would much rather them went defense and maybe got a Byron Murphy or a Quinion Mitchell, Terry and Arnold, someone like that. I mean, Brock Bowers, love the player, don't necessarily like the fit in Las Vegas. Jackson Powers Johnson, though, the guard slash center out of Oregon, I like the pick there a lot. Really good value. I think he should have been in the first round, and he was like the 24th, best player in the class, in my opinion. And then they got Delmar Glaze or DJ Glaze, the tackle out of Maryland. I don't really like that pick, actually. I was going to say it was a solid pick, but that's a reach, in my opinion. Tommy Eichenberg, though, down here, I know he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he's just a really solid linebacker. He's able to process at a high level, and he's able to tackle at a high level. Really solid linebacker 3 for a team, in my opinion. I like that pick a lot. And then the rest of these guys don't really impress me that much. So overall, just a very underwhelming draft class and a bit of a confusing one. So I'm going to go C tier for the Raiders. Moving on, we got the Chargers, and they ended up taking Joe Alt and passing on Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors. And I'm sure Chargers fans weren't the biggest fan of that, but Jim Harbaugh was always going to take offensive linemen here. He wants to shore up that offensive line so he can run the ball and protect Justin Herbert. Not to mention, they got a really good value pick here in Ladd McConkey, who can be Justin Herbert's best friend. He can be in that slot and get open with ease, and then have Joshua Palmer and Quinn Johnson both on the outside, and they could hopefully do a little bit something for you. But Ladd McConkey is probably going to be Justin Herbert's best friend next season. And then Jim Harbaugh's got to get a Michigan guy in here. He ended up taking Junior Colson in the third round, which I really like. He's more of an old school linebacker, a bit heavier, but really good in run defense and is valuable in pass coverage. Justin Eboigbe, a little bit rich in my opinion. I think he was more of a 5th, 6th round pick in my opinion. And then Cam Hart, really good value down the board. Kamani Vidal, really good just runner of the football. Doesn't offer much in the pass game. Brendan Rice, really good value. I mean, I thought he was going to end up going, maybe late third round. He ended up going here at 225 overall. Really good value in my opinion. Might even get some playtime ahead of Quentin Johnston if we're being real. And then he ended up slipping in another Michigan guy here in Cornelius Johnson. So overall, a really good draft class in my opinion. The Chargers aren't necessarily done with this rebuild. It's going to take a few years, but I think it's off to a really good start in the new Jim Harbaugh era. Moving on here, we had the Los Angeles Rams, and they had their first round pick since 2016, which is incredible to even think about. They ended up going Jared Verse here. I wasn't the biggest fan when it happened, but now that I'm sitting here, I really like it a lot. I mean, Jared Verse on one side, Byron Young on the other, and then you got Braden Fisk in the second round, him and Kobe Turner. I mean, that defensive line is young and talented. And then you end up getting Blake Corum, who a lot of people have soured on. I still like him a good amount. I mean, he's going to be behind Kyron Williams, but they're both kind of the same player, small, undersized, thumping running back. So, I mean, if Kyron Williams goes down, I think Blake Corum could fill in the role almost seamlessly. Cameron Kitchens, the ball hawking safety out of Miami. I like the value there a lot. Brennan Jackson, Tyler Davis, solid value. Jordan Whittington, I mean, he's a good, solid special teamer. Bo Limmer, really good depth kind of piece on the offensive line. So, I like the direction they were going. I mean, that defensive line is going to be incredibly young and talented for a while. And then Cameron Kitchens, just getting talent on that defense is a good idea in my opinion. So, I think the Rams really improved their defense here. So, I'm going to go B tier, but it could easily be A. Moving on here, we got the Miami Dolphins, and the story with this draft class is just developmental guys. I mean, Chop Robinson, really athletic, raw guy who can hopefully develop into a really good pass rusher, but right now we just haven't seen it. Patrick Paul, same thing, all the athletic traits in the world, size and stuff, but really haven't seen him put it all together yet. Jalen Wright, a really good running back out of Tennessee. I like that pick. Mo Kamara, again, a developmental guy, but, I was a pretty big fan of him out of Colorado State. Malik Washington in the 6th round, that pick I really, really like. I love Malik Washington. I would have been happy with the team taking him in the 3rd, 4th round. So getting him here at the 6th round, I like that pick a lot for the Dolphins. They kind of saved their draft class, if I'm being honest. And then Patrick McMorris and Taj Washington, solid guys down the board. We're going to end up going C tier just because it's a lot of question marks. Your top two picks, Chop Robinson and Patrick Paul, realistically could end up being bust if they aren't able to, put it all together. Up next, we got the Minnesota Vikings, and they ended up trading up with a just one pick and then getting their guy in J.J. McCarthy. I like the value they actually got here because they were able to keep their first round pick, which a lot of people didn't think they were able to do. And, they didn't trade up to, they didn't trade up to the fourth or fifth pick to take him. They kind of sat it out and was able to get him with a 10th pick. So I like the value there. I mean, I was never the, biggest hater on J.J. McCarthy. I kind of liked him. I just didn't like him going ahead of guys like Drake May, which he didn't. So he was actually QB, 5? He was actually QB 5, so good value there. They ended up trading up again with the Jacksonville Jaguars, taking Dallas Turner. He's got a ton of upside. Could end up being a top 5 pass rusher for them in the NFL, so I like that value there. Kyrie Jackson, just a big physical press cornerback out of Oregon. I like that pick a lot. And then the rest of these guys are just kind of meh picks. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Will Richard? I don't know. Hopefully he's a good kicker. I don't know much about him. But overall, I like that draft class a little bit, but I'm still going to go B tier just because, I don't know, J.J. McCarthy still scares me a little bit. Moving on here, we got the New England Patriots, and they were able to get Drake May with the 3rd overall pick. They ended up sticking and picking, and I was a bigger Drake May fan than a Jaden Daniels fan, so I'm going to count this as a steal for them. They were able to get their, in my opinion, the quarterback 2 with the 3rd overall pick, so I like that pick a lot. Jalen Polk, they got to get talent for Drake May to throw to, and I mean, Jalen Polk's solid value. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to seem like I'm hating on Jalen Polk, but Troy Franklin could have went here. I love Troy Franklin. Caden Wallace, a good tackle out of Penn State. Landon Robinson, same thing. Javon Baker here in the 4th round. I think that's really good value. I think he'll probably get a lot of playing time in year 1. Joe Milton went in the 6th round. I mean, sure, he might move the tight end, but you also got Jaheim Bell down here in the 7th round. Kind of an H-back, not necessarily a tight end. You're not going to line him up in line and ask him to block. He's going to be like a slot tight end. He can run the ball as well. He played a little bit of running back at Florida State. You could maybe use him similar to a Kyle Juszczyk is used in San Francisco. So I like that value in the 7th round a lot. Overall, I like it. Nothing special, but they did get Drake May, so I am going to go A tier for him. Moving on here, we got the New Orleans Saints. And it was inevitable they were going to go tackle in the 1st round. And they got Talise Fuanga, who I think is a really solid value there. Guys like Olu Fashanu went ahead of him, which I don't really think they should have. Same thing, really good value with Kool-Aid McKinstry here with the 41st overall pick. I think he could have went round 1, ended up slipping. The Saints snagged him up here. And pairing him alongside Marshawn Lattimore, that's going to be a really good secondary. Spencer Rattler, just, taking your flyer on a guy like that in the 5th round, I think is a really good idea. Bub Means, probably going to be a really good special teamer. Jalen Ford, same thing. And then the other 2 guys are just solid depth picks, I guess. So overall, I think they got really good value throughout that draft class, so I'm going to go B tier. Moving on to my favorite team, the New York Giants. We ended up going Malik Neighbors in the 1st round. Hallelujah. I love that pick. But it is scaring me because Malik Neighbors doesn't seem the most excited to be here, so I don't know. Hopefully him and Daniel Jones can build some chemistry, but, solely based on the value there, I like that pick a lot. Tyler Nubin, I think it was good value. And we need help in that secondary, so I like that pick a lot. Just a really good, solid safety. Nothing crazy athletically, but he's just going to be a good safety. And he reminds me a lot of Xavier McKinney when he was coming out of college. So hopefully he can be our next Xavier McKinney. Andrew Phillips here, the cornerback out of Kentucky. Maybe a slight reach, but again, we need secondary help, so you just had to get someone. Theo Johnson, a really good athletic tight end out of Penn State. I like that pick a lot. Tyron Tracy, the wide receiver converted to running back out of Purdue. Solid value there. And then the linebacker out of UCLA is a solid pick, I guess. So, solid value. I'm not the biggest fan. I like our first 2 picks. I think Andrew Phillips might be a little bit of a reach. I'm going to go just middle of the pack. Malik Neighbors really saved that draft class. Moving on to the other New York team, we got the New York Jets, and they ended up trading back 1 pick and still getting Olu Fashanu. And I know Jets fans might have wanted maybe a Brock Bowers here, but the two tackles you brought in are two really good tackles in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, but they're both older guys and with injury problems. So if one of those guys goes down, you're screwed. But now you got Olu Fashanu. I'm still gonna say Olu Fashanu. I'm just so used to saying that I can't help it. But you got Olu Fashanu who can step in if when Tyron Smith inevitably goes down with injury. So I like that pick a lot, but I feel like some people might not like it as much as me. Malachi Corley is going to have really good value now that the kickoff rules are how they are. So you really need a guy like Malachi Corley on your team who can just make something out of nothing on kick returns. So I like that pick a lot. He could also be a solid wide receiver too, in the future. Braylon Allen, just a bruising running back similar to Audrey Estime out of Wisconsin. I like the value there. He's kind of like the thunder and lightning behind Breece Hall. Jordan Travis, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play forever. You traded Zach Wilson, so taking a swing on a young, kind of high upside quarterback in Jordan Travis in the 5th round. I like that. You doubled up on running back with Isaiah Davis. I mean, sure, I guess. Quantez Stiggers, the Canadian Football Rookie of the Year. I mean, I really like Quantez Stiggers a lot. So I'm happy they got him. Really cool story if you want to look that one up as well. And then Jalen Key, solid special teamer. So I think they got really good value. I think some fans aren't going to like it because they're going to say they're a win-now team and they kind of, drafted for the future. So I'm not sure. I still like it a lot, but I can understand why some fans might not like it. Up next, we got the freaking Philadelphia Eagles, and they somehow were able to snag my top 2 cornerbacks in Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. How do they do that? I don't know. I don't know how Quinion Mitchell fell to them at 22, and I really don't know how Cooper DeJean fell to them at pick 40 overall. Probably the 2 best draft picks in the whole draft. I mean, value-wise. I don't know how Howie Roseman always does this. I mean, those 2 picks are just S-tier, just because of those. And then they got Jalix Hunt, a more developmental guy out of Houston Christian. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of that pick. Same with Will Shipley. I don't know. Anaya Smith I really like. Kind of a Debo Samuel mold, maybe more of a Laviscus Chenault. Jeremiah Trotter, his dad played for the Eagles, if you know Jeremiah Trotter Sr. Solid value. I don't think he's going to be anything special. Kind of an undersized, non-athletic linebacker, so you're not going to probably get much out of him. But Johnny Wilson in the 6th round is really good value as well. I mean, if you convert him to tight end, he'd be a really athletic, kind of Darren Waller-esque tight end. I don't know. I really like Johnny Wilson. I just don't necessarily know what a team should do with him, but he's a good talent. Similar to most Howie Roseman draft classes, I got to go S tier for the Eagles, and as a Giants fan, I really, really hate it. Moving on to who I think might have had one of the more underrated draft classes, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They ended up getting Troy Fautanu with the 20th overall pick. I think that's really good value. He'll probably play tackle year 1 alongside Broderick Jones, hopefully replacing Dan Moore. Zach Frazier, you got the center/guard out of West Virginia. Just a really nasty guy. I like that pick a lot. They're really doing a really good job at rebuilding this offensive line. They took Broderick Jones last year in the 1st round. Now you got Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier. You're putting a really good young offensive line. And then they got Roman Wilson in the back end of the 3rd round. Really good value. And the Steelers love their, 2nd and 3rd round wide receivers. So I have no doubt in my mind that the Steelers are going to turn Roman Wilson into the next Deontay Johnson, because he's really similar to Deontay Johnson, so really good replacement. Payne Wilson in the 3rd round. The only thing that made him fall this far is the injury concerns, because talent-wise, he's the best linebacker in the class and is probably a early 2nd round talent. But injury concerns push him down the board a little bit, but really good value there. Mason McCormick, same thing, really good value. Logan Lee, I'm not sure what you're going to do with him, but I mean, he's a solid player, and then Ryan Watts is meh. Overall, a really, really good draft class. I'm going to go S tier. I'm going to do it. I think these are going to be my 3 S tier teams, the Bears, Eagles, and Steelers. Really underrated draft class for the Steelers. I like it a lot. Up next, we got the San Francisco 49ers, and they ended up going Ricky Pearsall in the 1st round. I mean, I like Ricky Pearsall, maybe a bit rich in my opinion. I think he was a 2nd round talent. Replacing Ricky Pearsall with Lamb McConkey, I think that would have been a better pick. But either way, you're probably going to get rid of Brandon Ayuk. And Ricky Pearsall is kind of the Brandon Ayuk mold where, he's a really good route runner, can catch the ball. He just isn't going to offer much after the catch, but that's why you got Deebo Samuel. Renardo Green, a really good man cover corner out of Florida State. Dominic Pooney, the probably projected guard in the NFL, really good value there. Isaac Guerrero is going to be really good in that Shanahan offense. Jacob Cowing, the undersized, kind of just shifty guy, just really, really small. And then other two guys not too familiar with. Well, overall, I like the players they got. Maybe a few reaches here and there. I'm going to go B tier. Moving on to the 49ers, they ended up going Byron Murphy at 16. Byron Murphy was my defensive tackle 2. I'd much rather have this pick than Jerzon Newton, but either way, I like Byron Murphy a lot. I think he'll fit in really nicely in Seattle. Christian Haynes, a really good developmental guard, although I think he could start if they needed him to. Tyrese Knight, the linebacker out of Texas, El Paso. Not too familiar with him, I'm going to be honest. A.J. Barner, the tight end out of Michigan, he'll be a solid backup. Same with Nehemiah Pritchett. I like the value there. DJ James as well, just a little bit smaller. I much rather would have seen them go Troy Fautanu here with that 16th overall pick. I think that would have saved their draft class a lot more. And then maybe have went defensive tackle with the 3rd round pick. I don't know. I'm going to go C tier. Maybe a bit harsh, but I don't know. They passed up on Jerzon Newton, which I'm a big Jerzon Newton guy. Moving on, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they ended up going Graham Barton. I think that's really good value here. I would have liked to see them go maybe cornerback here. Nate Wiggins was still on the board, but I'm not going to argue with Graham Barton. I think he's just a really solid offensive lineman. Can play, center, guard, and can even play tackle in a pinch if you need him to. Chris Braswell will probably be a really good edge 2 or 3 on the team. It doesn't wow me with anything in particular, but it's just a really solid player. Tyke Smith is probably one of the best slot corners in the class, him and Mike Sanders still. Jalen McMillan, a really good slot option for the Buccaneers. Bucky Irvin, I'm a big Bucky Irvin guy, but I understand that he's a smaller, maybe a little less athletic than you would like him to be, but I don't know. I can't shake him. I like Bucky Irvin a lot, so that's a really good pick in my opinion. But overall, some good value, nothing crazy. We are going to go, I can't put them lower than B tier. All right, we're almost finished. Second to last team here, we got the Tennessee Titans, and they ended up reaching, in my opinion, on J.C. Latham. I think I think Troy Fautanu is a better tackle. I think Talise Fuanga is a better tackle. I think Olaf Fashanu is a better tackle. So, I think they reached pretty heavily on J.C. Latham. I understand what they're trying to do. He's a right tackle, but I would have rather have Talise Fuanga gone here. T'Vondre Sweat also a reach solely based on his off-the-field issues. Some people were thinking he was going to go 3rd or 4th round. He still went early day 2, so I guess they weren't too concerned. But I don't know. He's still a reach in my opinion, but I like the player T'Vondre Sweat. Cedric Gray, the linebacker out of North Carolina, is a solid pick. James Williams, a really big safety, probably will project a linebacker in the NFL. I don't know, just a lot of mad picks and reaches. So I was close to putting it at F tier, but I'm going to go just C tier, but close to an F tier. And then last up, we might have saved the best for last. This is a really good draft class the Commanders had. They went Jaden Daniels with the 2nd overall pick. Again, I'm a Drake May guy, but I still think Jaden Daniels is worth a top 3 selection, so I'm not going to knock him too much for that. Plus, he fits Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Jerzon Newton in the 2nd round is an absolute steal. He should not have fell to the 2nd round. I know he's a little bit undersized, but he's got elite pass rush upside, and I think he can hold his own and run defense as well. Mike Sanders still probably the best slot corner in the in the draft. He's a bit undersized, but he's a feisty, mean cornerback who can tackle. Ben Sinnott, probably, close to my tight end 2. I'm not too sure. JT Sanders was my tight end 2 forever, but Ben Sinnott is a really good tight end as well. Brandon Coleman is a tackle/guard who can, hopefully develop and, can start at some point his rookie season because they need offensive line help badly. Maybe that's the only critique I have is that they didn't really address their offensive line until round 3 here, but, they got really good value up and down the board. Luke McCaffrey was probably a bit of a reach in my opinion. I think there were better receivers on the board. Cough, cough, Troy Franklin. Jordan McGee, maybe a smaller linebacker, but really, really good, instinctive guy. Dominique Hampton, the safety out of Washington, solid pickup there, good special teamer. And then Javonte Jean-Baptiste is a really good developmental edge who can hopefully develop into something nice. So overall, I'm going to go A tier. You know, could switch out the Steelers and the Commanders and put the Commanders at S tier, but I'll go A tier for them. And that's going to do it. Let me know what you guys think of my tier rankings. If you like the video, consider subscribing. And if you have any problems with my opinions, let me know down in the comments. And with that being said, I'm the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.